They say that one must sell one's soul to achieve fame and fortune.
Established in the 1800s and counting among its members, politicians, entertainers.
But the cost of such devilish transactions have far-reaching consequences that many lack the foresight to consider. To whose soul and to whom you owe it to when you get what you wanted can be literal hell on earth for you and those around you. To do so on public television where the broadcast would eventually be vaulted, this is the story of today. Late-night television has long been a source of entertainment, especially for those of us who have trouble sleeping or even staying up late. The selection for many of us growing up at late hours was often pretty dry, especially if you didn't have cable. The primary choices were often the news, trash TV like Jerry Springer, reruns of unpopular shows, infomercials, the occasional movie, and late-night talk shows like The Late Show, The Tonight Show, Late Night, etc., and they have all featured a plethora of popular hosts, offering information on current events blended with comedy, music acts, far-out guests, and celebrities. Over the years, there have been quite a number of memorable moments and people across all this programming, but none have been quite like the guest appearance on a show from the 1970s called Night Owls. With the charismatic host that insatiably chased ratings to compete with competitors like Johnny Carson, the hunt for the numbers of Nielsen led to a dark path that would go live and ultimately leave some dead, with forces from the other side causing horror in what we will be discussing today in late night talk shows, as we are talking about Late Night with the Devil, the band, televised demonic possession. Sponsors have long played a part in television, bringing us fun and innovative products while sponsoring quality programming that keeps us entertained through all hours. Programming such as today's video, this message being sponsored by Raycon. With summer festivities in full swing, whether it's a celebration, a family cookout, or just a quick run to the gym, my Raycon Essential Open Earbuds are accompanying me through it all. They have quickly become a part of my daily routine as well as my girlfriend's. Since they're open ear, we can listen to music or podcasts while still hearing what's going on around us. They sound phenomenal and are very comfortable to wear. My girlfriend and I have both been loving them lately, and they're 20% off right now if you want to check them out for yourself. We use them every day, whether we're working, making dinner, doing yard work, or just relaxing and listening to music or a video. There's rarely a time where we're without them. These earbuds sit just outside your ear canal, so you get a really clear sound, but you can actually hear what is happening around you too. The awareness is not only perfect for tackling your fitness goals safely, but also allows you to stay aware of your surroundings. There have been times when I forget that I have them in. They are seriously that comfortable, so being able to hear when someone talks to me while listening to something has been a lifesaver.
I heard that.
They're really light and the ear hook part rotates, so they actually stay in. I've worn mine at the gym and my girlfriend's used them while cooking. It's a relief not to have to worry about earbuds falling out and into the food. They don't fall out and they also stay comfortable, even after a long day packed with activities. Raycon has over 3 million customers and the sound quality is just as good as the way more expensive brands. And if you don't like them, they have a 30-day happiness guarantee. The Essential Open Earbuds are a great option for everyday listening. Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/wowsuchgameandopen to get 20% off the Essential Open Earbuds. Thanks to Raycon for sponsoring. Opening to a montage of 1970s news clips setting up the late-night talk show Night Owls, structured like a documentary to give exposition, with very subtle foreshadowing by someone in the background asking host Jack Delroy what he had to sacrifice to be there tonight. We learn about Jack's climb to the top, his wife, and this bizarre men-only club called The Grove, being of prestigious politicians and entertainers with a litany of dark and shady rumors surrounding the organization and its people. with not much being known of what transpired deep within those woods in which they congregated in this Illuminati-esque fashion. A few short years after his dark dealings, Jack's wife contracted lung cancer, being quite a shock to her and Jack, especially since she never smoked a day in her life. 2 weeks before her eventual passing, she would make a guest appearance on his show. The heartfelt banter and what was basically a goodbye to the audience in the world garnered the highest ratings Night Owls would ever receive. His dear wife's death would spiral Jack's mental state, but not nearly as much as Jack's relentless pursuit to match the high of the views that the show had achieved that very night. Night Owls losing what footing it had and sinking in ratings hellaciously since the last episode of his wife's appearance. In an attempt to regain his following, Jack would bring on a sling of controversial guests that barely made any headway to achieving his former glory, but it did show the lengths that he was gonna go to just to ensure that the views happened to make those Nielsen ratings climb upwards. This pursuit would come to a penultimate head when Jack planned a Halloween special for October 31st, 1977. What we were about to witness was to be this episode, as well as never before seen footage of what happened that night to the guests, the audience, to a lovable man, and one particular girl. The footage begins with sponsors and the special guests being announced. First, the mentalist Christo. Then a former renowned magician turned anti-magic, Carmichael Haig. Third, Dr. June Ross Mitchell and the subject of her book, a girl by the name of Lily. Fourth being Miss Cleo James with a musical performance, and then ending it off with an annual Halloween costume parade by audience members. A packed spectacle that Jack hoped would be just the ticket back on the fame train. Jack would begin the special by sneaking up on Gus, his right-hand man on screen, although his official title just misses me. He dresses up as a ghost to scare Gus, setting the scene for what I'm sure will be an excellent light-haunted night of television, although light from the source of Jack would definitely cast long-reaching shadows. Topical jokes are made, and we are informed that it is Sweeps Week, a term referring to a week in broadcasting that can make or break a television show, so it was a thin line for Jack in everything that he had built up, and his mental state into how he even got there. With that, we are treated to our first guest, Christo. At first, he gives off a very John Edwards-esque performance, making his way through the alphabet, trying to find any member of the audience that may find a minimal connection to the spirits that he claims to channel, spouting off letters like he was John Edwards in that South Park episode. The first person he claims to channel is apparently still alive, and he embarrasses himself in front of the audience. Making fun of somebody like that? Well, that's some ratings there. Christo tries again, but succeeds with a connection this time as he stumbles upon two members of the audience grieving a family member who tragically passed away the year before. Whether this was a true channeling of a spirit or a coincidence or even planted people in the audience is never determined, as shortly after this interaction, Christo is suddenly overtaken by yet another spirit. But this was different. It got to the point that he breaks character and loses that phony baloney accent that he had been using. Listen to it before and then after.
Sometimes the signal gets scrambled, studio lights, cameras, I am only a messenger.
Something very intense here. Please, who will accept?
Making a genuine connection with the spirit that channels through his body by the name
Minnie!
He declares that he sees visions of sadness, specifically embodied in the image of a wedding ring. While the connection continued, nearby stage lights would begin to flicker and even throw sparks into the air. Jack uses this opportunity to go to a commercial break. The behind-the-scenes footage shows Gus saying that because of all this, he was a bit spooked. What they just witnessed was abnormal, and for the narrative, it was strange for somebody that was such a fake to be channeled through so otherworldly. It was jarring. But Jack paid no mind to it as they see that Christo's nose was bleeding as his demeanor had shifted to being visibly very shaken up. This was not part of his act. This was not some phony baloney stuff that he had scripted before. With this eerie chain of events being set in motion, Jack is told the show's very sponsors are sitting in the front row of the audience, adding more pressure to the already stressed out host. This had shifted all the concern that he had, or might have had, for Christo, and it was all about the ratings. It didn't matter what was going on right in front of him, because at the very front row of both the audience and his mind were the sponsors, were the views. That was all that mattered. Night Owls would soon resume as we are introduced to Dr. Carmichael Haig, a former magician turned incredible skeptic. He does a quick sleight of hand trick for the audience and then goes into talking about his newest endeavor, being a part of the International Federation of Scientific Investigation into the Paranormal. Once making a profession out of magic, now spending his life to denounce it in every facet of entertainment and society, going around disproving and being against paranormal activity and illusions like some former druggie being a part of DARE. Confident in his mission, he offers a reward to anyone out there who can prove their claims of real magic. During a heated debate between him and the psychic Christo, things hit a fever pitch. But not from their debate, as Haig would directly call Christo a fake, a charlatan, a man of smoke and mirrors for monetary gain. Christo would begin to enter an extreme state of distress of some sort and coughing hellaciously. Some thinking it was just him trying to prove his work was real through theatrics. It was all about channeling spirits, so making it seem like it was a possession, that was all he needed to disprove any doubts that people may have had. And this was for good cause, as many may have had the same mindset as the former magician. But Mr. Haig would denounce it all as simple hoopla for applause. Then the tone shifts more in the unsettling direction when Jack reveals that Minnie wasn't just some name that Christo had half-ass dropped like he did just one segment ago with all the people in the audience. Minnie was a private nickname for his late wife, never disclosed to the public. Haig jumps at the opportunity to pick apart the story though. Obviously, this was just an easy setup that was discussed between the host and him before the show without Haig's knowledge to be some kind of gotcha at him. But his skeptical rebuttal would be immediately interrupted by Christo suddenly collapsing to the floor, causing a shock to everyone there before projectile vomiting this black, tarry substance, a vile liquid that didn't seem set up. Not through pre-structured devices rigged in his clothing or mouth, no special effects as if Tom Savini was brought on to be a part of this broadcast, and to the astonishment of everyone on screen, this was something else, unexpected entirely. Prompting Jack to call for a commercial break, the crew rushed to help Christo and clean up the mess before going back on air. There was priorities going in every direction. Everyone else was concerned for this human being's life. But Jack was giddy at what just happened. It was caught on camera, and to his and his show's views benefit. While Haig and Jack have an off-the-record discussion, the wailing of ambulance sirens pierces through their words, especially to reverberate in a studio made for blocking out the sounds of the outside world. The dangers of what's to come were becoming ever more louder, despite how Jack tried drowning them out with casual engagement. The unpleasant sounds aside, the show resumes as Jack introduces the trigger for that night's descent into madness. Dr. June Ross Mitchell, author of the book Conversations with the Devil, that detailed the story of a young girl named Lily, the sole survivor of a cult that worshipped a demon known as Abraxas. The church was rife with claims of kidnapping and breeding children for human sacrifice. A major component to their rituals was stating that any witnesses to these sacraments fell under the spell of Abraxas. The church was eventually put through a Waco-esque siege of their compound at the hands of federal agencies, mirroring the People's Temple led by Jim Jones in the same decade, as well as the Branch Davidian compound siege in 1993. Religious zealotry polluting the minds of unaware or ignorant people to ultimately use and take their lives. However, those of the Abraxas cult would carry on not through cautionary tales of religious extremism, cult-minded followings, and more. No, it was something beyond human comprehension, all encapsulated within the body of the young woman, Lily. Having been taken and having lived, breathed, and been consumed by these rituals. Being rescued and cared for, she would quickly exhibit strange behaviors as detailed by archival footage from Dr. June, studied thoroughly for her psychiatric state to discern the effects of cult influence and hopefully treat her, discovering elements of her that were extraordinary in a sense that one would not want to find. Lily is brought to the stage to be interviewed by Jack. Lily would immediately give some ominous, honestly hair-raising comments in an almost robotic tone.
And you needn't worry about your TV show. I think you're going to be very famous soon.
Enough to make the goosebumps on his skin rise, more for his prior history and for such a vague statement to everyone else there and watching. While something like this would cause an average person to stop, Jack just calls for a commercial break. During this brief respite, Dr. June realizes the direction this was all going in. June had always worked individually with Lily and whatever entity had dwelled inside her, revealing that the day before the show, Lily had entered a fugue state while simply repeating Jack's name over and over again. These were signs that she ignored, but now was treating seriously, pleading with Jack to end the interview with them, that them being there at all was a mistake. Something was way off, and she knew better than anyone else that prodding to this magnitude would lead to something they could not come back from. But to Jack, that display of creepiness, dread, and even gasps from the audience, it was all pure gold. It was exactly what he needed to reclaim the glory his show had when his wife had died. There was no stopping the show, and he made sure his main attraction was not going anywhere. Ignoring the warnings from her, and now another premonition in the news that one of his producers had just delivered to him. Christo, after his display, his body seizing, his dropped facade, his words that made no sense except to him, and the black vial vomit. Christo was dead. While being rushed to the hospital, he apparently had suffered from some sort of extreme hemorrhage. Gus wanted to stop, fearing the worst. Jack outwardly looked frazzled, but the show must go on. Even with the guest that was just putting on a show to do what he did and then died less than an hour ago. This was getting out of control, but Jack, blinded by the hopes of snagging more viewers and saving his ratings, ignores everyone's pleas and continues the show. Night owls hooting back onto the airwaves, the interview resumed with Dr. June giving her credentials only to be harassed by the skeptical Dr. Haig, denouncing her studies into demonic possessions. Ignoring his interjections, she says that she believes Lily is possessed by a demon, not of the great demon Abraxas that the cult had centered around, but simply one of his underlings. Despite it being a lesser demon, it did not mean the being was any lesser in its intentions and dangerousness, showing Jack and the audience artifacts that were recovered from the aftermath of the Abraxas cult siege, most notably that of a dagger used in their sacrifices and rituals. Some may still be apprehensive that any of this meant a demonic possession, and instead the insane behaviors of brainwashed lunatics using knives to butcher people. But the show takes another turn when Lily reveals that she has a somewhat symbiotic relationship with the voices in her head and even soul, naming her demon Mr. Wriggles. It's here that the use of a theremin from earlier is suddenly hijacked. With no one near its antennas, it begins producing creepy and almost spectral sounds and music. The young woman says Mr. Wriggles is causing the auditory display, while Mr. Haig brushes her and the good doctor off. Haig had himself completely convinced that everyone there was in on a game to make him and his federation look like fools. He knew from experience the charade that was magic and demons. To push this further and really grip the viewers, sponsors, and Nielsen-cladded sweeps purveyors, Jack decided, because of all of this, that it was time to invite Mr. Wriggles onto the show. Dr. June had desperately warned him against this. This was entering a point of no return for unknown dangers. But Jack, through a probably personal history together with her, coerced her to go against her better judgment, with the spotlight shining brightly upon her in the darkness of the studios, which made a retreat for her seem impossible. Judgment was indeed coming. Gus was informing Jack that he and many others in the Night Owl's crew and staff were on the verge of just flat out abandoning the set. This was too much. This wasn't like his previous shows, where bringing on controversial figures meant at most fines or maybe some minor backstage turmoil. There was a corpse, but dead bodies paled in comparison to dead ratings. It didn't matter, so Dr. June began the demonstration with Lily now strapped to a chair as a precaution. June knew that whatever would take control needed for her body to be restrained, and even this was not a red flag, or even what should have been a raised white flag. The doctor would put Lily into a hypnotic trance. While Lily was away, Dr. June called Mr. Wriggles to come out to play. Lily's body began to twist and contort, all while the sounds of her bones snapping and cracking with each movement echoed out into the studio. Her complexion transformed almost immediately, her eyes shifting in color, her frame slightly expanding, her skin becoming sallow and cracked as if exposed to enough heat like the fires of hell that it dried her body. But most harrowing of all was when she spoke for the first time as Mr. Wriggles. Her voice had deepened to a Pazuzu level pitch.
Good to see you again, Jack.
Sorry, I don't believe we've been acquainted.
Don't be a fool. We go way back. We met amongst the tall trees. Remember?
The changed girl grimaced and turned her attention to Jack. An interview that would get the audience's attention and the viewers spiking. That very same forest where he performed untold rituals with the Grove. His past had come to haunt him, the present becoming a televised haunt. Caught off guard by mentioning the tall trees that afforded him everything, Wriggles continued his verbal expose to dig under the host's skin, exposing to everyone that Jack and Dr. June had long been having an affair, that his wife had died an ugly death, focusing on this to say that maybe her diagnosis was more than just a horrific medical twist of fate. The news of affairs and marital mortality was followed by Wriggles giving unsavory taunts at the pair, mocking them. A demon doing what it knew best, to get into one's mind, to sow mistrust, to cause panic and chaos. And it was slowly starting to work. Dr. June attempted to get control of the situation by pulling out what she called a protection artifact. But much like the Exorcist's encounter with the entity that claimed Regan McNeil's body, Wriggles simply scoffed and belittled her with what seemed like no effect, instead looking right back to Jack to utter the cryptic words,
"How could you let it happen, Jack? How could you let it happen?"
Electricity visibly flowing through the air of the studio, frightening the audience, and Lily's chair beginning to levitate on its own. The demonic possession was in full power. The very air around them was crackling with the electromagnetism of this demonic underling's energy, before all shutting down as the chair would crash down to the floor violently. It had appeared that the protection artifact had kicked in and repulsed Abraxas' minion for now, now Lily had returned to her normal self, even apologizing to Jack and the audience for how rude Mr. Wriggles was through her lips. Everything they just witnessed was ungodly, unearthly, unexplainable. But it was still a televised event, and Dr. Haig assumed it was all still just an act, chomping at the bit to refute everything that had just occurred, thinking Jack was pulling a big one on him again with hidden practical effects, or that Dr. June was one of the most skilled con artists he had ever met, denouncing all of her work. June defends herself by releasing Lily from her restraints before Night Owls goes to its next break. This was a phenomenal phenomenon. Producers were ecstatic, marveling at the ratings and calls pouring in for the show. The network was even scheduling an emergency meeting with the crew for the next morning about Night Owls' future. This was the return. This was Night Owls' big break, all thanks to June and Lily. Jack had offered them a spot on the talk show as regular guests to ensure those ratings would continue into the far future, but June wanted it to stop. But with Lily's restraints released and her having something to prove against the disbelief of Haig and those watching across the world, against all the blood, sweat, and tears that she poured into her studies, June continued. Night Owls returned to Haig and June's debate, with Haig stating that June's background and work obviously meant she was manipulating Lily's mind and using stagecraft to trick everyone there into believing her delusion, saying that he showed deep concern for Lily's well-being and state of mind, putting it on Dr. June that she was actually hurting the girl for her own personal gain. Jack jokingly snarks back at him that his offer of paying out tons of money for proof meant he would be skeptical against any proof shown to him, no matter the situation, prompting Haig to perform a demonstration of his own, with Gus as his volunteer. What preceded was mind-boggling. Haig would proceed to set the mood, asking Gus what his largest morbid fear was, and it was that of being worms. The creepy crawlies and the sensation they bring are too much for him to even dramatize. Haig would use a pocket watch that looked like it was straight out of a 70s cereal box, and began to hypnotize Gus, and even the audience. Gus was unaware that he was fully entranced into these manipulations. He didn't pay any mind to the notions of him being put under any spell, laughing him off until Haig simply snapped his fingers, putting him in a zombie-like trance, responding to each of Haig's questions before only hearing a nearly debilitating whistling sound as he became increasingly hot and itchy, to the point that he began to remove some of his clothing, soon developing a large hole in his neck, bleeding slightly, chalking up the nick to his morning shave until he feels inside his wound to pull out a wriggling worm, a sort of different Mr. Wriggles in this case, tons of them squirming out of his flesh wound, causing the audience to gasp in disgust and astonishment as Gus panicked, ripping his shirt off, screaming that he can feel them all colonizing in his colon, his torso exposed with the cross of Jesus adorned on his neck. The sensation is too much for Gus to bear as he rips his own gut open to unleash a ton of blood and creep clusters pouring out, a horrific and literal way to spill his guts out to the hypnotist turned skeptic. Haig attempts to bring him out of the trance by snapping his fingers, but it doesn't work. Haig had lost control, and this was apparently not a part of the act. Everyone was taken aback, except for Lily, who was laughing hysterically at these developments.
You're laughing.
Making one wonder if Mr. Wriggles had taken over the act to change from fiction to fact, all coming to a literal head when suddenly Gus's eye socket cracks open, his eyeball pushing out, a gigantic worm dooning its way out of his skull, his head lifeless and convulsing as the worm writhes and sits up as if looking at the crowd of horrified people. When it seemed like another body was tallied up for the Halloween special, Haig commanded him to awaken. The scene returns to normal, a befuddled Gus asking when they're going to begin this demonstration and wondering how all of his clothes got messed up, no longer remembering anything about any of the worms. Gus was unaware while everyone else there's eyes were popping out, nearly as bad as Gus's. Jack demands answers from Haig and asks the crew to play back the footage for them. When the footage is played, it shows Haig giving prompts to Gus, making him think he's uncomfortable. Everything that was just seen and even recorded was all an illusion that put everyone into a spell. Gus was fine and just acting it out, unaware that he was safe that entire time. Gus reels from major embarrassment as some of the audience admit that they don't even remember seeing the worms the first time around. A smug-faced Haig, now satisfied that he's proven that everyone was able to be deceived so easily, had believed that he had disproved Dr. June's demonstration of Mr. Wriggles within Lily, that mental and visual manipulation was a simple affair, and that his mastery of the magical arts meant he knew Dr. June's work with Lily was all a way to shape the young woman's mind so she could make money off books and appearances. The debate would continue as Lily suggests they play back the Mr. Wriggles clip to see if it was a trick on the audience as well, directly telling Mr. Haig that the video footage would not lie if they watched it together. This unforeseen augmentation of the show had Jack forego the musical performance from Miss Cleo in favor of showing this footage. He knew the audience would want to see it again, or for the people at home that just tuned into the show to see what had just happened and had caused a buzz where they may have been calling neighbors and friends to tune in. Dr. June, however, tries to take the opportunity for her and Lily to leave, saying that she no longer wants any part of this. June knew this was too far. Lily would refuse to leave, saying that she wants people to know the truth. Wriggles using Lily's visage to coerce Dr. June and what she wanted more than anything. She, as a doctor, wanted to be acknowledged and not ridiculed for her work with Lily, and more importantly, into demonic possession. She didn't want to be seen as the woman that was rambling about ghosts and demons. Jack directs the replay for everyone to see, his prior interview with Mr. Wriggles causing cracks in the audio of the tape and visual glitches in the playback. Haig, not wanting to pay out a large sum of money, says the tapes were obviously altered or recorded prior, asking for a forensic investigation on the films. As the tape continues, it clips, but Jack eyes something no one else did in that very moment, having his crew play it back frame by frame as slowly as possible during the 1 second long glitch. The ringing sensation that Gus once experienced started rising up for everyone to hear until a ghostly entity was displayed behind Jack, holding his shoulder, watching over him, transparent in white-robed attire, appearing as she did when cancer had claimed her life, mouth agape, a face that seemed to be in immense pain and staring off into the void. Jack, shaken, murmurs his dead wife's name.
Minnie?
A solid but pale hand on his shoulder in the live feed was there for a split second. She was there. The footage was no mock-up, no fake, no doctoring. It was all reality and was now brought to the forefront. Shit was beginning to hit the fan. Lily passes out in her chair. Haig angrily interrogates Jack that he was using his dead wife one last time for a gabfest, and it was reprehensible, rambling about the dead Christo, that this was all one giant conspiracy to use a dead woman's image just to prove him wrong and make some money. But Jack was no longer concerned about appeasing him, his guests, his audience, or even night owls. His wife was there with him, but not as a greeting or a sense of comfort, but a warning. Lily begins to quiver as static electricity snaps in the air. Jack and Dr. June attempt to help her, but when they touch her, her body shocks them as the studio loses power. The void entering the scene, darkness all around, only the sounds of demonic power surging as electricity still flowed. A flash of Minnie flickering on screen for just 1 frame. Her gaze directly at the screen, albeit from the side, as if she can't control where she is facing. Orange electricity flowing through her image as the darkness was all consuming around her. This was what was left of her, as light returned to reveal that Lily was gone and Mr. Wriggles was in control. Lily's body was highlighted in a blue and static aura, electricity flowing from her limbs as strong gusts of wind blow throughout the studio. Lily unable to move whatsoever, as all she can do is scream in fear and agonizing pain. In a matter of seconds, light begins to create a line on her forehead, splitting her head open down the middle, eyes and mouth hollowed out and orange with overflowing otherworldly energy as a blue flame-like aura pours out from the opening in her skull. Abraxas' minion was burning his way out of her mind, steam emanating hellaciously, her head like a portal to hell. The sights and sounds caused everyone except those on stage to flee the studios. Crew, stagehands, and even the audience. Gus, despite being so afraid throughout the night, resorted to the cross of Jesus around his neck, holding it in front of him and attempting to channel the power of Jesus Christ and God to quell or hold back the demonic forces at play. But he is forced to look the other way, not in a sense of wordplay, but the demon telepathically breaking his neck, snapping it completely around like an night owl. A horrifically punny way to die, as he crashed into the glass table dead in an instant. Dr. June knew this was a lost cause, but still attempted to use her protection artifact to stop the devilish underling. Having had enough of June's interference, Mr. Wriggles hangs her by the neck telepathically in the air, slitting her throat and killing her in moments, launching Jack in the opposite direction. 2 deaths in just under a minute, demonic power flowing all around the room. The evidence could not be more evident. Dr. Haig was now convinced that he was wrong, falling to his knees and pledging to worship this demon and do its unholy bidding, his principles crumbling in a moment, and even choosing to serve evil just to save his own hide, despite spending his life up until that point claiming that it was all a foolish farce, attempting to offer the demon a check both as the best bribe a human could offer in material gains, and as a way to prove to the demon that he had accepted that he was wrong and that he accepted the demon as his lord. But these last-ditch efforts of a desperate soul meant nothing to Mr. Wriggles. The check was instantly incinerated. Haig was wrapped in the same staticky aura of the demon, the fires of the inferno coursing through every fiber of his being as he screamed in misery, feeling everything, his flesh melting like wax, skin dissolving to expose his innards, dying as if he had burned in hell. This was not another illusion by Haig. Every guest was now deceased. During the chaos, the show's producer attempted to lead Jack to safety, clipping the wings of Night Owl's broadcast as a station difficulties card fills the screen. The visual halted after a short time as the show began to restart, with Gus introducing Jack to the stage once again as it all melts down into this bizarre, hallucinatory sequence through the mind and memories of Jack Delroy, a clip show or greatest hits of Night Owls through the memories of its illustrious host, his dead friend, the only person illuminated by the stage lights, laughing at Jack's frazzled state as a gallery and band of faceless silhouettes join him in a ruckus of guffaws, until abruptly going silent and stoic in expression, before it all cut from hearing the audience that was once lively with Gus being alive. But now, all that remained was a dark studio and the electric eye of the camera that watched over every step of his journey. Skits of the past were playing as Jack could only sit there and say,
"What the fuck is going on?"
Going to an interview with an animal tamer that pulls out a giant worm from a bucket, looking similar to the one in Haig's illusion that bored straight through Gus's skull. Perhaps a visualization of Jack's psyche over the guilt of Gus's demise, or a cruel representation of his dark dealings, since worms live beneath the surface, working unseen, symbolizing hidden forces, the unseen realm, or the dark side of life. In some interpretations, this underground, hidden work mirrors the way the devil is often portrayed as a hidden, insidious presence, especially when the tamer tells Jack to relax, as the creature offered to him is perfectly harmless. Probably the same sentiment offered to him ages ago by those amongst the tall trees. His journey of past blending with the present came to a head when he was face to face with his dying wife in his last interview with her remarking when they met and how much he reacted to see a flurry of naked bodies at Calcutta, saying that like most things in their relationship and his career, he tended to forget. Uneased by her words, tries to shoo away this phantom by saying that she was dead, proving him wrong by deeply taking a breath from her oxygen tank as the station difficulties card appears once again, only this time melting. The fires of hell were burning even in the broadcast. The image of the show as a distraction for things in his life could no longer interfere in how Jack operated. Gus led a spin the wheel segment after this, where it looked just like Haig's pocket watch from before, a giant means of hypnotic manipulation. Jack could only look away from the spell and pleaded for home audiences to turn off their TVs and stop watching the episodes, screaming for this to happen. The demonic forces at play kept cutting him away from obscuring the wheel repeatedly. Images would soon flash in this spiral. His cancer-ridden wife, a blood-soaked man screaming in red, Lily's mouth wide open with misshapen teeth, near darkened glare and cracked skin, as if this was a glimpse at Mr. Wriggles' true face. And notably, Jack looking back at a laughing audience, and more importantly, away from the image of himself smirking directly at him, as if he was being interviewed and ridiculed by what was him, but not him. Flashes of the forest usurp here, the theremin in a nest of broken branches, as the same spiraling motion seen looking up into the tall trees jolts the sequence to Jack when he was originally signing his contract for Night Owls to be on UBC TV. The flash of paparazzi asking, just like the audience at the very beginning of the show, what he had to sacrifice to be there. Only this time the question is answered by a network executive who states that Jack's greatest sacrifice has yet to come, as he hands Jack a silver chalice. Two masked people who look similar to those photographed at the Grove guide him from the light of his dreams to the darkness of his nightmares. The finale was at hand. Night Owls' original schedule for the Halloween special was to end with a costume parade. As Jack was brought back on stage, his costume studio audience followed in tow behind him. The image of the Night Owls logo on the door was replaced by a demonic painting. A candlelight vigil was all that made the room glow. This was a seance, as shown when the man that appeared in the vision from before walked up to him in a red robe, possibly a member of the Abraxas cult, congratulating Jack on the performance of the night show, telling him in words that would once fill him with glee, a 40, maybe even 50% audience share across all broadcast television. But it mattered not. No response, as he was brought to a person donning the head of an owl, surrounded by network executives, audience and viewers, and demonic cult members, drinking an unknown liquid from the chalice as they all cawed in unison. A ritual in motion, much like Dr. June had mentioned with the cult of Abraxas before, sipping from the Caninus Spiritus, the Kool-Aid, as many would so often quote in discourse to this very day. The ritual completed, the converted door would slide open to show his wife dying in a hospital bed. Her sickly and hairless face struggled to get out any words, saying that they told him that he could have it all. Be number one. His audience share, after pressing so hard despite all the warnings, was proof of that. Yet his bedridden wife tells him that he had to pay a price for this success. Jack's success came at the price of his wife's soul, courtesy of the Abraxas cult and the ones of the tall trees, the Grove, and that his soul belonged to them. Sacrificing her was not a part of his plan, but it was never his plan from the beginning. She begs him to do one last thing, as we see the artifact dagger left behind by Dr. June coming into frame. Wanting to be freed from Abraxas' grip on her soul, he plants the blade into her chest. He would scream and awaken. He was back in the studio like nothing happened. The spinning disc from earlier had placed him into an illusion, much like Haig did before, and now he was snapped back to reality at the action of murder by his own hands, realizing that he had killed the possessed girl Lily instead. He attempts to bring himself out of his trance using the word that had worked for Haig earlier in the show. Yet, this was no illusion, no trick, nothing to return from like before. This was the waking world that we all lived in. As the camera panned out, sirens are heard in the background, and the bodies of his guests and Gus in a studio devoid of life and laughter was all that remained. The deal with the devil was completed. All he had left was to repeat to himself to try and awaken from this living nightmare, as the transmission abruptly ended. For those unaware, this video is a review of the 2023 film Late Night with the Devil, following in line with my previous review and analysis of mockumentaries like Savage Land and The Bay and found footage narratives like Wreck. I wanted to discuss narrative significance in the story, but also make it engaging to really describe it like it was something that actually happened, because that is the climate that YouTube currently is in. This movie did a pretty awesome job at setting the mood as a 1970s late night show, from the title cards used to the stage design, the costumes, the characters, how they look, how they act. The show's intro felt like I was watching an actual rerun of an old show, and I found myself even looking forward to the guests that were advertised at the beginning of the show. Dave Masselchain, my girlfriend told me how to pronounce his name, but I'm butchering it, but that's what I typically do on this channel, is I kind of butcher names and then people comment, but I really thought he did a fantastic job as host Jack Delroy, and on an unrelated note, was amazing as Mr. 3 in the second season of the One Piece live action series. He had a captivating energy as the host that made him feel like a real late night lead, especially when he was delivering funny quips, and his banter with Gus felt genuine as well. His interactions with everyone were quick but charged, but also completely changing his demeanor with staff and guests and producers, and how his hunger to save night owls and, more importantly, his career pushed him to be beyond himself, channeling what he truly was, a lesser Johnny Carson that grew more and more desperate the larger he fell under other people's shadows in television. The narrative of his life being owed to the Grove and Abraxas, and it all coming together when a vessel of the demon's minion was there to collect his god's dues, just by pure chance when interviewing one of the escapees of the occult of Abraxas. His pursuits in fame and fortune had come full circle, how consuming Hollywood can be, and the great lengths people will go just to reach for the heavens at any cost, and end up falling into hell. Haig wasn't too far off in his final ranting about Jack using his dead wife. It was him chasing that high of the view count that the show had before she passed that pushed him to put everyone in harm's way despite the warning signs that were blatantly there, especially from a demonic entity he had owed his very life and success to, but not really considering it from the start. Really neat to see the facade of a popular host be peeled back more and more throughout the show as the revelations keep coming in, with fake magic being killed right in front of them, skeptical magic being proven wrong, and showing how quick they will change their morals and ethics, how someone that was corralling these demonic forces was ignored and ultimately killed just to have those rantings and ratings go by when facing actual demonic forces that were ignored. The juxtaposition of the scene from the television show being in color, while the footage from the past and the behind the scenes stuff being in all black and white, it was really interesting, and I liked how that worked in the movie. You might have noticed I used a little bit more black and white. It's just kind of a copyright thing, bloody scene so YouTube doesn't get at me. I'm not usually into Shudder original movies, so at first I didn't expect too much from this movie, but I found myself pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed that many of the special effects used in the movie were practical. As a fan of old school special effects, this was a bonus to me and my girlfriend. The practical effects of Lily and Gus's heads opening up were awesome and felt like a film ripped right out of the decade, even with that cheesy little aura of electricity making its way through the wires like Poltergeist. Lots of inspiration went into this amazing work. I was, however, disappointed to learn that generative AI had been used and traced over for some of the cards signaling commercial breaks and such in the film. That probably would have been not only an easy job to create organically, but also could have been a great opportunity for any artist out there. I mean, it's not like making 70s artwork would have been hard. They did that 50 years ago. Regardless, this is one of the creepiest films I've seen in ages and felt real, and more than anything, it had such a unique premise. This is in front of a live studio audience, and it had me at the edge of my seat for some of the scenes, especially the worm scene and the head split and open scene. I highly recommend watching Late Night with the Devil to get the full experience. There is nothing quite like it, and honestly, I'm going to watch it again every year for Halloween. It is that good. Now, many people in my Savage Land and the Bay reviews assumed I was either reporting a cover-up or spewing fake news lies. I just like talking about good movies that make you feel like this was something that was recorded live. But no, this was not a Late Night with the Devil kind of situation. It was a movie, so don't be a Facebook boomer believing the thumbnail for this video and commenting without reading or watching, and enjoy the subject of the movies that were Late into the Night with the Devil. And if someone does end up commenting about that, just, let them know that you should probably watch to the end. Now, what do you think? Is there something I missed or should have explained more? Let me know down below and what you want to see next. Make sure to support the channel by contributing to me on Patreon as a patron, or become a YouTube channel member to be featured on this list scrolling by right here. And see my videos up to a week early if you become a patron. Also, again, shout out to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. Until next time, I'm Zach S, aka Wild Such Gaming. Never forget to stay happy, stay healthy, stay sane, don't make any deals with the devil, and most importantly, stay wild.